Okay, now let's talk about third type of switch commands, and that is switching to frames. For that, we will first begin with an exercise, and then we will see why the need for that arises. So we go to this switch frames. So there is a link given here, and actually what we want to achieve through automation is we want to go to this page, then we will go to tags and we will type some text. So we will say test. This is the simple thing that we want to achieve. Just open the browser, go to this URL, type test here, and we are very well aware of how to do these things. So we say public void switch frames, and let's go and put things here, and I'll call this function sc.switchFrames. Yeah. So what we are going to do is WebDriver driver equals new Chrome driver. In the end, I'll say driver.quit. For now, I'll comment it because we want to see what happens on the page actually. Then what we will do is we'll say driver.get. We have the URL with us, so we'll paste the URL. This is where we want to go. Before that, we'll set implicit wait timeout, driver.manage.timeout.implicit wait timeout, which is 30 time units dot seconds, and we'll also maximize dot window dot maximize. So now we go to this page. The next thing that we want to do in this page is we want to locate this particular text box. So we inspect. When we inspect, we get its ID's tags. So let's get that tags. So we will say driver dot get, sorry, not get, by find element by dot ID, and we know the ID that we found is tags, and this will give us web element for tags text box. Then what we want to do in this text box is we want to get put some text here. So we will say tags text dot send keys, and we'll type in test here. And just for confirmation, let's also try to get the text from it and print it. So I'll do sysout tags test dot get text. So we are just getting what is the text that we have put inside this box. Fine. So a simple straightforward scenario that we are typing some text, we are getting the text and printing it. And let's see how this automation goes. So we run it, the browser window launches, we go to the right page, and there is nothing getting typed here. We go back, we'll wait here because we have given implicit wait of 30 seconds. It is trying to find an element whose ID is tags, and it is not failing immediately. It will wait for at least 30 seconds before saying I did not find the element, and this test is bound to fail. And once we understand the reason of its failure, then we say okay, we understand what frames are and how to deal with frames. So it will take a delay of 30 seconds, and after 30 seconds what it has said is, it says to us no such element found, unable to locate, if we read the description, unable to locate an element whose ID is tags. Now this is strange, right? We have a page which has an element whose ID is tags, and Selenium is not able to find. Now reason is simple. This particular section of the page that we are seeing, this section of the page, it is not part of the original page. It is part of a frame on the page. So frames are nothing. You can say there will be a page in that you can load the source code from another sites or from same sites, but let's say these are the frames f1, f2, f3. Now frame in itself are totally separate browser pages. If we want to act on, like, this tag input is, let's say, inside the frame 1, if we want to do something with this frame, this button is not part of our original page, or this text box is not part of our original page. In order to act upon it, we have to first switch to that frame, act on it, and then come out of the frame. And how do we make sure, like, how do we know this is part of a frame? Most of the browsers, if you right click, then you will see it is saying view frame source. Typically this wouldn't have come if this section was not part of a different frame. So if I go to a separate site, google.com, we right click here, we are not seeing show the frame, or even if I click on the right side, we are not seeing this is a part of separate frame. So typically when the sections are part of frames, then we have to switch to the frames. And another way of validating is, let's inspect this element. This is the input tag. You see this input is part of a body, this body is part of an HTML, and this HTML is part of an iframe. So this iframe that we saw is representing this full section, this blue highlighted section. You see this is a separate frame, and you see this is coming from a different page, default.html. This is not part of the same page. So in order to work with any element inside this iframe, we have to locate, like there is an ID here, there is an ID here, but before we can act upon them, we have to switch to this frame using either its name or ID or basically the index. So let's see how do we do this switching. Now we understood the reason why we are not able to find it. Now before doing that, we'll say driver dot switch to dot, there is another function, switch to frame, and we see frame has three functions: frame by index, frame by name, and frame by a locator. So we can go with any of these. So let's go with third one first. So we are switching to this frame, and we have to give a locator, we have to give a web element. So let's first locate the frame in total. So I'll delete this, and I'll be using the Firefox browser's FirePath extension. So we go to this page. In order to locate the frame, I will go to inspect in FirePath, and okay, this is coming directly. We have to go to iframe. So let me go to iframe. Inspect in FirePath. Okay, not this way. Let me go back to this browser itself and see how many iframes this page has. So I'll go to view page source, iframe. So there is one iframe here that is highlighted, and this is the closing tag. So in the page, if we see, there is only one iframe, so we can switch to the iframe simply by saying driver dot switch to frame, and we want to switch to 0th frame because there is only one frame, index starts from 0. So now this will switch us to a frame. So we are switching to 0th frame. Once we have done that switching, wait, I deleted something else here. So once we have switched to 0th frame, then if we issue the find element command, this command is going to act on the HTML code of that frame. Then we will be able to see the things moving. So let's try to run this scenario now. So we see now the test has been typed here because we have switched to the frame in which this test is. Now you may ask a question like why I have chosen to go with the frame index 0. Reason is that this frame has a source attribute and has a cd frame id attribute. It does not have the attributes that we needed for switching, because switching typically happens with frame. So either we need to use the first function, which is by index. Second function, if we go to, then it will tell us that when we are switching to the frame, which is this, then it takes the id, which is a string, and this string is whatever attribute is there on the frame. It should be id or name attribute of the frame, and in our case, in this particular case, this frame does not have any id attribute or name attribute. Since that is not there, I had to go with 0 index approach. If we do not want to take any of these approach, then other way was this iframe we want to locate, we can copy XPath. So I have copied XPath of this frame. Then what I could have done is I could have done web element frame element equals driver dot find element by dot XPath, because browser has given us the XPath of this frame, and this XPath, let's include single quotes, because when outside we are using double quotes, inside we cannot use double quotes, so we have to put single quotes here. So this is the XPath of that iframe. Now we found the frame web element. Another way of switching was we would have said driver dot switch to frame. This is the third function. So we say switch to this particular frame that we are giving you, which we have located, we have found, and we are giving you. So in case id or name is not present, this approach should not be used, because this is unnecessarily like sticking to the hard coded values. So we should stick to use the third switch to function for frame. So let's go and do this and see that even now our scenario should work fine. So you see the text has been typed here, and when it is typed, okay, ideally after typing we should have got the text here, but we are not getting the text back. Okay, one reason behind that is whenever we type something in a text box, then its value does not come as the get text. Its value is always available using get attribute, and this is the value attribute. So text boxes, the value of text boxes go in the value attribute. This is the way to get the text inside a text box. So we will give this a try because we want to see this text being printed. So I'll close all the browser windows that we launched. Let's run it again, because in output we should see the text that we have typed in the browser. So now you see this is coming. So in order to get the text inside the text box, we should also always do get attribute of value, and that's how we will get it back. Fine. So this was switching between frames. One last thing about frames is, inside a page, inside a web page, there can be a frame. Frame can have another frame, another frame can have another frame. So in case we have switched between frames, like we have gone to that frame, we have got the text, we have printed it. After that, what if we want to get back to the original page? So we can do driver dot switch to dot it is parent frame. Parent frame from any frame is to move back to the parent, and there is one more function called default content. So this will bring context of driver back to main page code. So this is something that we should keep in mind. Even if we have switched to any frames and we want to come back to the main page code, then this is the command to use. So switch to has multiple functions: default content, parent frame, frame, alert, and window, and all these things were coming under switching commands.